One of these billionaires a couple years ago, he asked me, what does wheels falling off mean to you? You can't get electricity, you can't get fuel, and you can't get grain. If you couldn't get that, the culture would change so much that we can't even imagine what it would look like on the other side. Alternative economies, alternative energy, alternative commerce, transportation. In some ways, I say let it happen. The main institutions that drive the culture are becoming more and more opaque. I mean, you can't fix your car anymore. You can't even fix your tractor anymore. The number of people who are exiting the system continues to escalate. There's a yearning, the human soul, to do something that's authentic, that's meaningful. I want to disentangle from the financial system, disentangle from the health system, the food system. You feel oppressed, you want to get out from under that.
World War III is already happening.
This is a house of cards, and it is in the process of collapsing right now.
You're going to see an economic crash, the likes of which we've never seen.
Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here, back again with Joel Salatin, farmer, best-selling author, prolific blogger, and a pioneer in regenerative agriculture. From Polyface Farm in Virginia, he spent decades proving that local self-reliant food systems can not only survive, but also thrive. Today, I hope to talk to him about living off-grid, building resilience, and preparing for whatever may come next. Now, Joel, last time we spoke was, I believe, 2023. It was before I had my off-grid retreat. And you were then in the process of being consulted by a variety of high net worth individuals who are trying to build out agrarian bunkers. Now, are people still soliciting you for advice on how to pad themselves for a collapse scenario?
Well, yes, but they're not billionaires.
Okay.
The billionaires dried up there pretty quick after COVID. COVID, I think, sent everybody into a dither. But yeah, the number of people who are exiting the system continues to escalate. I mean, that's a trend that is here to stay, and at least for the foreseeable future. And so yeah, I'm still doing a lot of advising, for folks that are starting over in a rural setting, or trying to make their more urban setting more, grow their own food and that sort of thing. And that movement is, I think, holding well or accelerating.
And so why do you think people's motivations are changing? I know since the last time we spoke, I purchased some property and started to build out some self-reliant systems, if you will. Part of my motivation has always been a potential for food insecurity. And is that what you think is driving this? Is it health related? Is it just people who are wanting to escape the clutches of an increasingly more complex system?
Yeah, I do. And by the way, I think one of the dry up of the billionaires now is Trump's election, which I think has, and I don't want to get all political and partisan here, but I do think that his election gave some some optimism to the wealthy class. And I don't think he's an enemy of poor people, but I do think that he loves business, and so the very, very wealthy class, I think, I think they're in a little more stable mentality with him in there than the others. So that's part of why that dried up. But as far as what is driving all this, the term that I hear all the time is, I just want to disentangle. I want to disentangle from the financial system, disentangle from the health system, the food system, all those things, disentangle, because complexity, as things become more complex and opaque through artificial intelligence, through, that you can't talk to anybody on the phone anymore. You get a robot and you never know if it's a person. All of those things are for those of us who are kind of thinking and intentional about stuff, you feel like the main institutions that drive the culture are becoming more and more opaque and impossible to penetrate with with knowledge. I mean, you can't fix your car anymore. You can't even fix your tractor anymore. I mean,
Hmm.
everything is just incredible. I mean, I talked to a guy yesterday. He had to replace his car, and we had replaced our old. I had my airport truck was a little Ford Ranger. We called it Tonka because it was such a toy truck, like a little kid's toy, Tonka truck, and and we had to replace it a couple months ago, and we got a 10-year-old Subaru Outback, and it's a great vehicle. But this guy, he was looking at that. He'd gone down to the place, looked at a new one, and he just was scared to death of it. It had everything gadgetry. And he said, you can't work on it yourself. You can't even take it to a mat. Can't You got to take it back to the dealer, because they're the only ones with enough computer insight to even work on it. And so I think it's this entire this just uh, um, almost enslavement to the man, to the system, to the corporate culture that when you feel impressed upon, you want your freedom. You want to
Hmm.
you feel oppressed. You want to get out from under that. And so I think that kind of emotional oppression is coming from a lot of different directions.
And I think people feel that, but perhaps, can't articulate it in the way you did. I did a video recently about how the fourth industrial revolution has brought with it this degree of complexity that people intuitively fear. They don't really know why they're hesitant to fully commit to it, but I think it's something to do with the reasons that you're stating that they know that in utilizing these systems, there's also a part of them that analog part, perhaps, that is associated historically with agrarian lifestyles that they're losing. And should the system collapse, they would be completely vulnerable because those traits that guided us all throughout our evolution would have essentially atrophied. Uh, does that line of thinking resonate with you at all?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It's complexity breeds fear because you fear what you can't understand. And so as systems become more and more I know it's not a word, but ununderstandable, where they just become so difficult you can't understand them. You don't know what makes your car go. It used to be you turned the key on, you had it was pretty simple. It was all mechanical, and now we've got 10 computer microchips in between, and you can't. It's like the car is thinking. But what was that Trans Am TV show from years ago, Knight Rider,
Yeah.
where the guy had a Trans Am that talked to him. I think it was named Kit, wasn't it? Kit, he
Yeah.
talked to Kit, his car. Uh, and,
We're pretty much there now with Teslas and AI. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, you're exactly right. And so as you get into that fear, that ignorance of the system, that it's just too deep and complex to penetrate, breeds fear because we fear things we don't know. I mean, that's human nature. We fear things we don't know. And so when you fear things, you tend to want to run. You run from things you fear. And um, so I think that is what's driving a lot of this right now.
Yeah, like I know for myself personally, I've spent a lot of time outdoors. I enjoy the outdoors, but I also enjoy the amenities of the city. And I think for a lot of preppers, perhaps there's a distinction between like the classic prepper versus the homesteader, in which the homesteader, perhaps for whatever reason, romanticize a lifestyle of, just living closer to their own supply chain. Whereas preppers are building this ark of sorts, and I find myself between these two worlds. And this can be challenging because, before we started here, I was telling you how, I kind of have one foot in the door of the rural and one foot in the door of the urban. And it's a difficult worlds to reconcile in that respect. Do you think that people who are motivated for the reasons of wanting to prepare for potential collapse, is that sufficient to keep you motivated and to keep you going in this off-grid lifestyle?
No, boy, that's such a perceptive question, and my answer is quick. So fear, my sense is that fear makes us run, which is a good thing. I mean, if you're being chased by a lion in the jungle, you need to be running. All right. So fear makes us move, and but fear does not give us a place to stop. Fear makes us run, faith makes us stop. So at some point, you have to quit running and by faith sit down and say, okay, here's where we're gonna make our stand, or we're gonna, here's where we're gonna put an anchor down. And so I say fear makes us run, faith makes us stop. And our life it's consumed by both of those. I mean, we vacillate a little bit, between those two. Even in a day, you get a terrible report. No, the sky is falling. And then you see, what somebody's done with their underground greenhouse and they're raising bananas in Ontario. You say, this is cool. This is ultimately hopeful. And you find yourself, like a roller coaster between those two all day long. But for sure, you cannot sustain a disentangled life if all that's driving you is fear. You will not make it. I can tell you that. I've met people that have tried and it doesn't work. At some point, you have to balance your pessimism with optimism.
And so where does your optimism stem from? Like, do you like the lifestyle? Do you like getting up there every day and going out and doing the hard work in the rain and with the bugs? And, how do you endure through those hard times? What part of the lifestyle do you like the most?
Yeah, my mentor, Alan Nation, who founded Stockman Grass Farmer, he said at some point, and he was talking very generically. I mean, he was started the Stockman Grass Farmer, but in business in general, he said at some point you have to embrace the slog. He talked the slog. The slog is reality. And every day isn't 70 degrees, puffy white clouds, and green grass. Sometimes there's brown grass, drought, and insects, and all that. And so, how do you punch through that? Is you have to just realize you have to embrace and enjoy the slog. And so for me, I another element I think is to appreciate that you're into legacy mission. We're not just trying to figure out an alternative, whatever energy source or a way to unplug from Vladimir Putin's fertilizer when we make compost. We're actually doing something that's sacred, noble, and goodness and legacy righteous, something for our world that's better. And we talk about those kind of terms. We do this for dancing earthworms. I mean, poetry. I mean, somewhere along the line, you have to bring poetry into your life to create the aesthetics and the exuberance that comes with whatever you're doing. And we need that in every vocation, not just farming, but in every vocation. In other words, too often work is relegated to, well, I got to work in order to have fun, mm-hmm. and even parents denigrate work. Well, I got to go to work, as if work is some sort of a prison sentence. And so somewhere we have to appreciate the nobility, the sacredness and nobility of work, in that our vocational work is is building a better world. It's is making a better neighborhood, making a better community. Um,
Hmm.
making a safe place to live, and an enjoyable place to live. Those kind of things need to dominate our vocational conversation.
Interesting. That's I like how you put the sacredness of work because indeed it's very enticing to want to just, kind of throw in the towel and, indulge in the many amenities of the city. But what I've also found is that in an age of AI and displacement from numerous parts of the workforce, people are going to be seeking something to give them purpose. And it almost seems like there's a purpose in the toil and in the strife that come along with this type of lifestyle. And I think that's one thing that is often underestimated, and it's a value that is not immediately apparent.
I think you're exactly right because self worth comes from successfully accomplishing meaningful tasks, and
Hmm.
and we see that in our young people. Teen side is off the charts. Well, one of the reasons is they never do anything that builds their self-worth. They know what important stuff is. They know that it's more important to know how to whatever grow a tomato or a carrot than it is to be a top points getter on some video game. They know that even if they've never grown a carrot or tomato, there's a
Yeah.
yearning in the human soul to do something that's authentic, that's meaningful, that redounds to the overall benefit of humankind, and simply entertainment and TikTok don't redound to the betterment of humankind. And yeah, I think you're right. I think this is a soul level, spiritual, intuitional bedrock that you're right. You use the word purpose. I love the word purpose. That is powerful, and feeding yourself and being able to my 401k plan is knowing how and living proximate to people who know how to grow things, fix things, and build things. If you know how to grow things, fix things, and build things, that's worth way more than any 401k plan. And what's happening now is people are actually cashing in their 401ks to get to a community and a place that where they can learn and become friends with people who know how to grow things, fix things, and build things. And I think that's a very exciting development.
And so the people who are doing this, are you still doing like consulting for these things, or is it just more so a general uh, discussion and education throughout your prolific writings and blogs, or are you actually doing still one-on-one consulting with people?
Yes, I absolutely do one-on-one consulting. In fact, I was on one just 2 days ago, up of actually an NFL player,
Oh, wow.
and his family has bought a piece of land, and they want to grow their own food and all this. They know he can't play forever, and
Yeah.
so it was real fun to be with that family. But I do everything from little homesteads to 100,000 acre Montana ranches, and not a lot, 10 or 12 a year, but that's enough. And and yeah, there's definitely room for that. And you can spend a lot of money. You don't have to have a very big acreage to spend a lot of money on things, whether it's machinery or buildings or whatever. And so, what I do is go in and try to keep them from wasting money. I want every dollar to be spent strategically and not in the wrong directions. And so it's fun to get on a place like this one I was on Monday that's brand new. They just bought it they bought it in 2023 in late in 2023. So they've only been there a year and a half, and now they're ready to, they've got moved in, and they're kind of ready to go. And it's fun to deal with somebody like that as opposed to somebody who's been there for 20 years and they're struggling, and you just go and you weep over how much money they've spent on this, that, and the other, and you wish you had a nickel for every $1,000 they spent unnecessarily.
So it sounds like there's still a lot of high profile people who are coming to you for advice on how to build a detached, off grid, self sustaining system. It's surprising considering, these people could, you know, live high on the hog in the high rise buildings of the most densely populated cities and enjoy all the amenities of modern life. But they've chosen this. Now, these bigger projects like these 1,000 acre plus projects, what exactly are you like? How do you go about that? What are they looking for? Like a self sustaining system at that scale, or are they talking about commercial typically?
Well, but both. I mean, a lot of people, they're actually coming to this, and these are not. I mean, yeah, the NFL player Monday, but that's an aberration. Normally, it's just much more normal, normal people that are looking for a change in life. A lot of families are looking for a family compound. Mom and dad have money, and they've got two kids now with four grandkids, and can we develop a family compound here? And so there's some of that too. So it's all over the spectrum. It's all sorts of things, but a lot of them do want to actually transition into an agrarian income. And so my platform is very simple. I'm a pretty simple guy. And so my platform is pretty simple. I start with three things: access, water, and control. Access, water, control. So access, of course, is how you're going to get there. You can't do anything unless you can get there. And when you intensify your land production like we do, you can't wait till the rain stops to go feed the chickens or to go do what you have to do. So you need all weather type access. So, we talk about water bars and volume and velocity, how to keep a farm lane up, low maintenance, no culverts. Culverts are very expensive, but that's what all the bulldozer schools teach is, you put in culverts. So I talk about outslope rather than inslope. And we build ponds instead of culverts. Instead of you go over a valley instead of putting in a culvert in the bottom and making filling out with road. Instead, you put a dam in and you put your culvert in the top, and now you move the same amount of dirt, but now you have a pond instead of just a drainage ditch. And so there's a lot of this kind of technique to developing a piece of land that can be multi-enterprised but very very efficient. You've got to be able to get around. So access is number one. Number two is water. You can't do anything without water. Even vegetable production, you need dependable water. So we deal with ponds and water systems,
Wells.
black plastic pipe. Yeah, yeah. Cisterns off of roofs. Wells are the last one on my list. I want to do everything possible before a well, because a well is kind of out of sight, out of mind. It can get contaminated, and you're pulling from an aquifer instead of increasing the commons. So I want to increase the commons with surface runoff inventory. And then the third thing, of course, is control. That's fencing. Um, so I mean, obviously, most of the places I go, they're livestock type because that livestock is my specialty. And so I'm talking about how do we move the animals efficiently from place to place, and how do we keep them where we want them to be for the day or two we want them to be there. And this is all pigs, cows, chickens, turkeys, whatever. And so the control is critical as well. So access, water control, that's my platform. Usually you can kind of get that. I mean, unless it's a humongous acreage, but usually you can kind of get that doped out, in a morning, and then in the afternoon, then you go into branding, marketing, team building. Who's going to do the labor? Uh, um, one of my favorite exercises is fill it up. So, I mean, knowing what I know about what can be produced, what if we fill this up, and typically, you can run a piece of property that somebody would generally think would generate, 50 or $60,000, and suddenly, by the time I get done, it's a million, and
Oh.
suddenly there's hope. There's hope. Oh, we actually could make a living here. So
Mhm.
then you deal with market. Who's going to be your market? Who are you going to sell to? What form are you going to sell it? What infrastructure do you need to sell it? People don't want a cow running through their house or a chicken on their plate. They need a chicken breast. Well, then we got to package it, we got to freeze it, we got to deliver it. All those things come into play. But anyway, yeah, it's a very very exciting time, and it's great to brainstorm with people, and always I always learn something everywhere I go, because everybody's different and they got a little different set of resources and circumstances, and so it's it's
Do you
it's
ever
it's
see people who, come to you for a consultation and you think to yourself, man, these people are not going to make it, or they have a misunderstanding of the level of commitment that's going to be required? And how do you approach that situation?
Oh man, yeah, that happens. That happens. You go there and you're there for half an hour, and you realize the best advice I can give you people is sell it, because you're never gonna make it. But you
Uh,
can't do that. So
right.
you kind of go through and do the best you can. But yeah, you're exactly right. There are people in La La Land that have read some books, and they built this fantasy in their dream world, and they want to have horses and llamas and bison, and fill the place up with a bunch of exotics that I know are just going to be a money pit. But it's what they've dreamed. They've seen a pretty picture of a Scottish Highlander, cow that's all, hairy and got hair all down over his horns, and some heirloom pot-bellied pig, anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, we talk about that. So yeah, I'm well aware. And by the way, just so you know, I charge more for consulting than I do speaking, because I find consulting is really energy draining for me. I mean, you're
Mhm.
there for 8 hours, uh, and you're supposed to solve all their problems and get everything fixed, customized to their needs, and it's a pretty heavy it's
Yeah.
a pretty heavy day. Whereas when I'm just doing a speech somewhere, you fly in, you do your 1 or 2 hours of speech, and everybody's happy, and you get in the plane, you leave. But in the consulting, it's a full on 8 9 hours of heavy, heavy full on.
So in terms of, like, myself personally, I have 160 acres. About 90 acres of that is prairie grass, and the rest is, like mixed forest. They call it aspen parkland, kind of like
Uh-huh.
we're kind of in the transition zone between the boreal forest and the grasslands.
Right, right.
And
Yep.
how much land do you think a person needs to start this? Because, of course, money is an issue for a lot of people nowadays. And I know that you rail against people who say that the price of food is expensive. But in terms of just general living nowadays, it appears as though the cost of living is increasing. So, how much land do people need to get started?
All right. So I actually did an analysis a couple months ago, because doing a bunch of questions around this topic, and I realized that we could run our farm. So just so you understand, our farm now, in 2024, it just passed the $5 million income mark. Now
Wow.
we have 22 salaries. So, I'm not putting all that money in my pocket. That's gross income, but I'm trying to help you to understand this is not a backyard operation. Okay. And we never made a business plan. We never had a goal. We never had a marketing goal. We just it's kind of like that chick flick, while you were sleeping. And so Teresa and I, we looked at each other and, well, just while we were doing this, people came and we added this and we added that, and the next thing here we woke up one day and here we are. So I did this analysis and realized that we could do everything that we do if we only owned 5 acres. And because we lease several properties. I mean, a dozen or so in the immediate area. And there's a lot of land to lease around. A lot of land is leased. We certainly don't lease all that's available. A lot of other people lease land because farms are very much in transition right now. A lot of it's being sold. A lot of the farmers are retiring or dying, and the kids always have to go through this. Well, do we keep it or do we sell it? And so then you have this kind of interim period while the kids are in their 30s. They're not ready to sell it, but they're not sure what they're going to do with it, and so they lease it. And actually, you'd love this. In the last 6 years, we've helped, I think, six people buy a farm property that we manage for their bug out area, for a safe haven. So they stay living in the city, but they know if things fall apart and they can get here, that they will kind of join our community and we'll help them and we'll get along. And so we've actually helped several people. In fact, we're helping one right now. I think they're going to close in the next day or two on a property, and just as a safe haven, as a refuge, if you will. And so this whole tension that you're describing, this urban-rural tension, so all these folks continue to live in the city and have their nice job and all that, but they know they've got a safe haven, they've got a harbor out here that if they can get to it, they'll be okay. So we've actually helped several people that obviously they have some money, and they buy a property, 100 acres, 120, 130 acres. These are not big properties, but they're not 10 acres either. They're something that we can work with. And so
And they typically have like a residence, like a secondary residence on this property, or is it just farmland?
Several don't. Several don't. A lot of them are just farmland. A couple of them don't even have electricity. They don't even have a drop. And so we go over there with our solar energizers, for electric fence or battery powered something, and operate those independent.
So are you ready, just as a sidebar, are you ready for when, if it does hit the fan, these people are coming out and now dependent on you for keeping them alive and teaching them everything they need to know?
Well, I guess my answer to that is that if things like that happen. So I had one of these billionaires a couple years ago. He asked me. He said, "What does wheels falling off mean to you?" And I said, "Well, I don't have an answer. Let me talk to my team and get some advice." And so we spent a week. I'm talking to them about what does wheels falling off mean? What does like total collapse mean? And so we came up with 3 things. And of course, we bandied about a lot of things, but if you make too big a list, you get lost in the intimidation of it. So we came up with 3 things. We said you can't get electricity, so your power's gone. You can't get fuel, and you can't get grain. And partly we were looking at where are we the most vulnerable, because we're pretty independent here, and we have our own sawmill, we have our own mechanics, we grow our own food, we have our own energy with all the firewood. We don't make our own clothes. but we don't need many clothes. I mean, we don't wear tuxedos and stuff, and we're not, we're not fashionistas. So clothes are kind of an ancillary thing. And so we have 12 miles of gravity fed water. So we have 12 miles of gravity fed water that waters the whole farm without any electricity or pumps. So, we got some stuff going for us. And so part of this was just, well, where are we vulnerable? What would hurt us? And so we came up with this electricity, fuel, and grain. And then as we got to meditating on that, we realized, well, man, if you couldn't get that, the culture would change so much that we can't even imagine what it would look like on the other side. And so your question, are you ready to, train these people, whatever? Yes. Let me just say that these people have enabled us to, to grow, to accommodate young people that want to farm with their properties. We've grown obviously to love their land. We manage it. We, take care of it. And would it be bumpy? Yeah, it would be bumpy, but everything would be bumpy. I mean, if you go to that point, it's hard to imagine what would happen on the other side. And I'll just mention this. We had a fascinating visitor, one of our tours this last summer. He had just retired as a high level intelligence officer in the U.S. I don't know,
CIA?
defense. Well, no. It. I forget the name of it, but it's the umbrella over all the spooks. So this is the umbrella over the CIA, FBI, Department of all these things.
NSA, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And he'd been stationed in his career. He was a 30-year guy. He'd been all over the world, different stations. And he said they had just, and this was in 2020. He was here in 2023, and he said they had just finished doing an analysis of all of the historical collapses, civilizational collapses in history, where they were catastrophic collapses. They didn't happen slowly; they happened fast. And he said what they found was that the point of crisis was 90 days. That within 90 days, there was alternative economies, alternative energy, alternative commerce, alternative transportation, all sorts of different things developed post-apocalyptically within 90 days because humans are so innovative and creative that we figure out things. Now, I'm sure in the space that you've been in, Nate, you have certainly become very familiar with, I'll just pick one, alternative energy. There's a lot out there besides windmills and solar. I mean, there's, there's biogas, there's ceramic towers with magnifying glasses on them, with turbines in the middle of them. There's, micro hydro power. I mean, there's a ton of stuff out there. But it never sees the light of day because the culture and the government are subsidizing and financing wind and solar. We picked these two winners. We're gonna throw all of our money and all of our investment in these two winners, and instead of letting the whole marketplace kind of compete for
organically emerge.
Exactly, or organically emerge. I mean, my car mechanic years and years ago told me that in the 1960s there were at least 4 people who developed a 100-mile-per-gallon carburetor for automobiles, and every one of them, as soon as they got the patent, either an automobile company or an oil company bought the patent and shut down the 100-mile-per-gallon carburetor. Now, it's immoral. It's unconscionably immoral that for 50 years we could have had 100-mile-per-gallon carburetors in cars, and didn't have them because somebody shut it down.
Yeah.
And so all I can say is that as worrisome as things might be, the human spirit is pretty creative, and we come up with things, and so in some ways I say let it happen. Let's unleash the backyard mechanics again. We don't even think about bird flu. We don't think about all these bogeymen that the industry is concerned about. Our animals are so vibrantly immune. Everything that's outside conventional channels is going to be less susceptible to whatever attacks conventional channels.
The best way to support this channel is to support yourself by gearing up at CanadianPreparedness.com, where you'll find high-quality survival gear at the best prices, no junk, and no gimmicks. Use discount code PREPPINGGEAR for 10% off. Don't forget, the strong survive, but the prepared thrive. Stay safe.